question. It's the first question people always ask you. And it's really hard to answer because it's never just one thing. It's what I find with everyone. There'll be multiple things that kind of got you on that journey. And it's such an epic journey. It changes your life forever. For me, it's a little bit of a sad start. My dad, unfortunately, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And the first thing the
Jeez.
doctor said to him was, you know, you need to cut out all red meat, you need to cut out eggs, and you need to cut out dairy. But they didn't use the term vegan. I didn't even know what
Mm.
veganism was back then. This is going to 2016. I'd never even heard of it, didn't even know what it was. Um, and so, where they said all the things that he couldn't eat, they didn't then follow up with the things that he could eat. So, instead of then going down the route that most vegans go down, you know, discovering chickpeas and lentils, all these amazing healthy things that make you feel great. He ended up having chicken pie for dinner every night, you know, and he went from being this big
Mm.
kind of burly man that loved his food to dreaded the meals because all he thought in his head, you know, he'd been conditioned as we are, you know, typical British kind of pub grub food. So all he can have really is a chicken pie or a bit of fish. Which is a real shame. And then I went veggie with, well, not veggie, pescatarian, to try and, when I was with him, eat what he was eating, to try and get him a bit more, you know, enthusiastic about food and things. And then I was in a restaurant with my mum, and I was sitting next to this fish tank, and there was these beautiful fishes in there just swimming around doing their thing, and I just felt so sad for them because for their whole lives, all they're ever going to do swim round and round and round, and
Mm.
it just really got to me. And then my dinner arrived and it was cod and mash, and I just thought, you absolute hypocrite, you know. And that was my light bulb moment. Then it all started for
Mm.
me because of dad and a health aspect, and then that was the first time that the kind of animal side of things, you know, really hit home for me. I signed up to for January in 2018, which is absolutely fantastic because all the things that you don't realize about veganism, the awful truth of what happens to animals, you know, it gives you that information, but it's not forced down your throat. You know, there's just links and documentaries and things you're advised to watch. And then when you choose to watch them and you learn the awful truth, you just can't go back, can you? So I had this kind of year plan. I
Mm.
was going to first cut out meat the first 3 months, then I was going to cut out eggs the next 3 months, then dairy, and then lastly fish. Fish was the thing that I was going to struggle to give up the most. And then I saw certain documentaries, and then my life changed, and that was it. I was just vegan, done. You know, when you've seen what happens to the animals, you just, oh, it's a horror movie, isn't it? It's a horror movie, and your life changes forever.
Yeah.
And then from that moment onwards, I've just wanted to share the ugly truth with as many people as I possibly can and just try and save them. You know, like if I had a superpower and I could do anything, I would save animals. And I don't have a superpower, and I wish that I did. And then I guess the next step for me was working out, you know, what do I have that I can do to help animals? Going vegan for me wasn't enough. Like I needed to do more. I'm not doing huge amounts. I'm not, you know, rich. I'm not a politician, but I'm doing what I can. My strength is in writing, so I decided to write books and try and spread the vegan message that way. And it's going well. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
Looking back,
Mm,
you that moment in the restaurant where you saw the fish tank,
mm,
etc. There's an incredible amount of empathy that's quite. If you think about like the average, 99% in the UK population, probably wouldn't have had that empathy to have made that connection in that moment, even if their a relative was on the kind of the journey that your dad
mm,
was on.
mm.
They probably wouldn't have still made that kind of connection. When you look right back, was there kind of signs of that empathy being there earlier, do you think? Like, had you always considered yourself like an animal lover, like a lot of the population do, and so on?
100%. And that's what bothers me so much. It's one of those things, like at night, I am very, very, very aware that for the first 30 years of my life, I was the world's biggest hypocrite. You know, on Facebook, you'd see the images come up of, you know, the Yulin Meat Festival, and you'd be horrified for all the dogs and the awful things they go through. And then you'd
Mm.
sit down and have your chicken, rice, and veg for dinner and not even give a second thought, or at least I didn't. I hate myself for this. I won't lie, I hate myself for this. I wouldn't give a thought to how that chicken got on my plate, how I'm eating its wing, you know. Part of the research aspect of me that I have to do for my books now with the certain story that I've written. So the books that I've written, we're kind of in we're the milking mothers, we're the steak, we're the chops. So it's a reverse cycle on the life as we know it now. So we're in the animals' place and the animals are in our place. But in order for me to do that, I had to learn exactly what it is that animals go through. Now I've seen in excruciating detail how a chicken is slaughtered, well, murdered. I mean, oh, I didn't sleep for weeks afterwards. It was my partner is he's not vegan, and he was sat next to me while I did a lot of Zoom calls with, slaughterhouse workers and farmers and the Viva Investigations team, which was so helpful for me when I was writing book 2. And, I was getting graphic detail of exactly what happens, and he had to leave the room, and he's not vegan. He likes animals, but he's never going to go vegan for, an ethical reason. He's a very different person and on his own kind of journey and things, but even he had to leave the room, like it was just, everyone needs to know. Because if everyone knew, I genuinely believe at least 90% of the population across the entire planet would be vegan, but it's just hidden from us, isn't it? And that's what's so wrong about it. So many of us can't really say unknowingly, because we're aware that we're eating a dead animal. No one can say, no, I didn't know that wasn't chicken. I can't say that. I knew I was eating chicken. I knew I was eating cow, lamb, pig, whatever I was eating for those first 30 years. But it never crossed my mind the how did it happen, and that's hidden from us. And I want to share with as many people as possible how that does happen, but in a way where they're open to receiving it. I don't want to be forcing it down people's throats, or people thinking, I don't even want to speak to this person because I know what she's going to tell me. And that's why I chose writing, because people are choosing to learn about it if they pick up my book, so that was the kind of path that I went down for me.
Thinking of that path, like we said, you've made this kind of ethical connection based on this sort of moment that crystallized kind of all of your empathy for animals and so on, that was kind of underlying, and it kind of all crystallized in this moment and came to the fore. And so now it sounds, as you talk, like there's a very logical thought process there. Like, I've seen this, I don't want to be part of it. And once you know it, then how can you not want to remove yourself from that system?
Exactly that.
Thinking about that, how did that kind of logic then apply when you think about relationships with friends and family that you knew, as you were going about telling them, this is what I've discovered, and naturally when we tell everybody what we've discovered, we hope they'll make exactly the same logical conclusions as us.
Like that.
And it can be frustrating when they initially don't. But how did that process sort of pan out for you?
The hardest part of going vegan for me was people's reaction to me being vegan. And I think that will probably resonate with a lot of other people that are on, their vegan journey or have been vegan for a while. I can deal with not eating meat. I can deal with never touching leather again. I love my plant-based milks. I love having a chickpea curry. Every part of veganism I cherish. It's part of who I am now. It's brilliant. People responding to me going vegan, that was what made it difficult. It was so hard, just, from the, but bacon, and, all the comments we've all had, and I'm going to feel really bad if some of my loved ones watch this now, but, there are some people in my life who I love and cherish dearly, and I know they love me. We're a tree, we're each other's branches. We really, really are. But even some of those people, the V word has that kind of effect on people sometimes, where instantly it just kind of gets their back up. So one of my bestest friends asked me, I'll never forget, you're not going to think you're better than me, are you? And I just couldn't believe she asked me that. And I was at a party once.
Wow.
And I was the only one there that was having something vegan to eat, and everyone else's dinner came out. One of my friends decided to jump up and go, oh, Ray, don't look, the whatever's come in. I just thought, we're in this big group of like 30 people. Everyone's obviously turned around, and then everyone's like, oh, yeah, she's a vegan. And it's just, but why? I'm one of your very best friends. Why are you doing that? Why are you ridiculing me for my life choice? But they just don't understand it. They haven't had that journey, and at the beginning I started a blog like to share healthy recipes. I was pregnant at the time, so I was really kind of advocating, for a plant-powered pregnancy. both my pregnancies. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Both of them were vegan. I didn't have any of the issues that you normally associate with pregnancy, you know, bloating, swollen ankles, and all the rest of it. Like, I loved being pregnant. It was amazing. But it didn't work, you know, it didn't work. It just wasn't having the desired effect for me. And I wanted to share my new knowledge with people, you know, and I just didn't know how to, because when I tried to have that topical, you know, conversation with people, I became the friend that didn't get invited to parties anymore, or that got taken the mick out of every time they saw me, you know. And it was affecting me mentally. It did really get to me. I went with all my friends to Thorpe Park once, and what's always funny is I was never the person to bring it up. I was when I was with my friends anyway, I'd never bring up that subject, so I just knew how it would go, but it would always come up anyway, because there's some stuff they just had to say. And I was eating our dinner, and yeah, one of them just like really just went in on me about just everything. No, but how do you know? How do you know that this happens? And da 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 da. And I'm really glad she did this. This is the one conversation that I had with one of my friends where they were openly kind of mocking me, if I'm honest. But she was right. How did I know? Yes, I've seen all this footage. Yes, I've read lots of documents, and yes, I've seen the documentaries, but I haven't seen it firsthand. Now, the chance of all this being lies is pretty slim. We all know this is what happens. But how do I know? I've not seen it. I've not been there myself. So that was when the next journey kind of started for me. You know, I attended some Save Movement vigils, and I've been to slaughterhouses, I've been to farms, I've watched endless footage for the research for the books and the stuff. And I know now, if someone ever asks me that question now, I've got 1,000,001 answers that I can strategically fire off, you know, because I know it is what happens. And I just want to do whatever I can to kind of stop that. But talking about it with people, for me, had the total opposite effect. It just didn't work for me. And again, I think that's why I chose to use my strength, and my strength is writing.
So let's talk about that. When did writing become a part of your life?
All from the beginning. So even before my vegan journey, I had a PR agency prior to this. I had a PR business since I was a teen. I've been writing press releases since I was 20. You know, the god awful real life magazine stories that you'd read in the Sun, like, you know, I caught my partner sleeping with my friend. Yeah, I wrote all of those for the money. I didn't want to write anything, but they paid great. And that was the next step for me as well, closing that business, moving away from there, and then having a vegan business as well. You know, I couldn't make all these changes in my personal lifestyle and then have a business that wasn't overtly non-vegan, you know, but all my clients were, you know, a lot of my clients were fast fashion, which I'm very against. Everything I wear is secondhand now, you should probably tell. um, yeah, or, you know, I'd have clients come to me wanting to promote a particular product that wasn't vegan, and I'd never want to have that conversation of, you know, I really want to work with your brand, but you're not vegan, so I can't, you know. But I did have to have those conversations. And there was another kind of light bulb moment where I realized, right, I can't do this anymore. So I had to close that business and then do what I'm doing now. So I've always been writing, but I began writing vegan fiction, which is a thing. No one has really heard of vegan fiction, but it is a thing. It's a great thing. 2018. So dad passed in the end of July 2017, and then I did Mother January in 2018. And then before he passed, he has a ring that he asked me to wear when his time came, and it's a Peridot ring. Like, it's got no monetary value whatsoever, but it's with me every day. And I just decided to write this story of this, you know, girl called Peridot who was going to try and save the world. And I did, and now I'm an author of vegan fiction, and it's all quite mad, really. My life has just completely changed with all of this, but in the best possible way. I'm so glad it all happened.
Tell us about the process of writing a book, a fiction book, and was that your first time writing something of that length and scale in fiction?
Yeah, definitely. So again, I'm used to writing for tabloids and newspapers and magazines. The first time I wrote something fiction based, I think I was 10 at primary school, and I wrote a story about a magic waiting room. And if you press the light switch in there, it would take you to somewhere else in the world. Bit random. Yeah, so I hadn't wrote anything fiction based since then. But it was in my fish tank moment after that happened and we left the restaurant. I remember saying to Mum, I need to write a story that puts us in animals' paw prints. And I said, I need to write this really quickly because someone else is going to have this idea. And if I don't like write this and publish this and it's not out next year, someone else is going to beat me to it. So I need to write this really quickly. And in my head, like the story was just coming, and I sat down the next day and I just started writing it. And all the books that I've written, they're named after vegan documentaries to kind of substantiate some of the things that happen within the book. So I write fantasy novels, and the kind of factual element behind it is what happens to animals in the real world happens to humans in the Earthlings world. So the books that I've written is called the Earthlings Trilogy. So book 1 is out now, Earthlings the Beginning. Book 2, Dominion, is out in November, and the final instalment, A Land of Hope and Glory, will be out at some point next year. I'm writing it at the moment. So yeah, in the Earthlings world, our roles are reversed. So the world is run by an evil chicken named Alan, and humans are we're the walking mothers with the steak and with the chops. And this young magic born girl, Peridot, she doesn't know she's magic born. She doesn't find out until she's a teenager. And as she comes into her powers, she realizes that she's been raised away from the realities of the world. So she doesn't know that the world is run by animals. She believes that the world is kind of as we know it now. She goes onto the mainland one day, and we get to see through her eyes what's happening to humanity. And what's happening to humanity in the Earthlings world is what's happening to animals now in our world, But again, it's not forced down your throat. It's not me saying, this is what's happened, it's wrong, we need to change. It's seeing this through the eyes of a 16-year-old girl and feeling her horror and having these powers and, wanting to save them and deciding whether she should save animals or humans is the ultimate message of the story. Or can she save them both? Can we all live together harmoniously, which may or may not be the end of the book. I'm not going to say. But yeah, that's where it came from and where it's going.
What led you to take that particular path with your book? Because I can, obviously you've got a passion and a talent for writing, and that's the place that you see your activism best serving. So you wanted to move into that space, and that makes complete sense. But obviously there was a lot of paths you could have gone down. Then you could have gone down the non-fiction route. You could have gone down a more reality-based fiction. But you've chosen fantasy and you've chosen fiction in this kind of expansive narrative over the course of 3 books. What led you particularly to that set of decisions?
It's a really good question. I'm really pleased that you've asked that. So something that I think is lacking in the kind of vegan world is everything's kind of about the food, or everything's about things that you can buy, or documentaries, which is all great. These things work. It's what turned me vegan. But imagine just reading a book, the main character's vegan. Imagine watching a TV show, or your favorite movie, one of your favorite Marvel characters is vegan. That all these little things would make a difference. But imagine picking up this fantasy book. Imagine, say it was like Harry Potter or Hunger Games, something that's really well known, and you have no idea that it has a vegan message. It's not. So I pitch my book as climate fiction because everyone cares about the climate, everyone cares about the environment. As soon as I put the V word on my book, no one's going to want to read it. So I didn't advertise it as vegan fiction. It was really important that I didn't do that, because I just want every day people of all walks and ages. Fantasy has such a broad spectrum, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 20-year-old. My main reading group seems to be women of my age in their 30s, which is nice. But, it's aimed at young adults. It's aimed at teens. My oldest reader is 85. My youngest is 10. It's got that huge spectrum. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people really have a passion for fantasy, whether it's magic or dragons or superheroes. Anyone of any age or background might want to pick up this book and read it. And the majority of those people aren't vegan, which is my target audience, non-vegans. But then by the end of it, they might have that light bulb moment that I had with that fish tank and think, hang on a minute, what Peridot's trying to say, this is really wrong. This shouldn't be. That was the intention behind it. Again, not to force things down people's throats, because I hate to say it, when I first went vegan, I became the dreaded preachy vegan. I was. As soon as I saw something on social media, I shared it with my thoughts, and That's probably why my friends
Mm.
reacted in the way that they did, because I was so, this is wrong. And it is wrong, but that's my opinion, you know, and as much as I agree,
Yeah.
I think my opinion is right, and vegans will probably agree, you know, it is wrong. People have to discover and believe that themselves, and that's not going to happen if it's just forced on them all the time, you know. That works for some people. Again, it worked for me, but that doesn't mean it will work for everyone else, you know. The books that I write is almost like a really gentle form of activism, because it opens people's minds up to the realities of the world and what is happening, but in a way where they want to turn the page, they want to see what happens next, you know, because there's magic in there, there's adventure, there's all these other things, and the message behind the book is almost the sub narrative. I made the book magic based so that hopefully everyone would want to read it, and then hopefully the majority of people would get that message. If I'd made my books just about the message, no one would have read it. That's the reality. So I kind of
Yeah.
had to do that, and it's working, which is really nice to see.
You raise a really interesting point, and I'd love to sort of get your expanded thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
that, because as a I totally get relate and get that sort of feeling, particularly when you first sort of discover what you discover through your kind of like vegan journey. You have that kind of
Excuse
if
me.
you if if you're familiar with the Twilight series, I always think it's like, you know, when there's a new
Yeah,
vampire and the rest of the vampires have to keep them away
yeah,
from like general
yeah.
society because they're a bit too like bloodthirsty.
That's us.
Um, or the,
Uh,
I was going to say it's probably like a bad analogy, but I always think it's a bit like that when you first become vegan. You're just so desperate to tell
yeah,
everybody the sort of the truth
yeah.
of what you've seen, and then I kind of wrestle with, we sort of soften a little and we find different ways to talk about things, and I do wrestle with it sometimes because there's sometimes a bit of calling out, if you like, within the vegan community from those who believe that what we want to do is be more aggressive in our
Mm,
activism versus those who think,
mm,
well, actually we need to kind of normalize things and make things more palatable for
mm,
people. And I sort of go betwixt and between these
mm,
arguments. I have to admit, probably everything I've seen is that softer approach, and normalizing kind of seems to
mm,
work more effectively. But I do wrestle with it because it feels like, I don't know, maybe when you are very vocal and you're doing that kind of like the street
mm,
activism, kind of like the debate me
mm.
and that kind of stuff, that you're, I don't know, you're almost like, well, you're more active in
Yeah,
your veganism, so therefore you sort of you feel more
yeah,
validated, or at least you can wear the higher level badge of
yeah,
being vegan because you're doing this and that and the other. I'd love to get your sort of thoughts on that, because I do wrestle with it and I go one way and the other from day to day, hour to hour
yeah.
almost.
I completely agree, and I resonate with that 100%. I did an interview recently with the marketing director at Veganuary. So off the back of the book, I got a job at an online vegan magazine, VLAND UK. Check them
Mm.
out; they're great. And it was really funny. One of the topics that we kind of came up with is there is no such thing as a perfect vegan. Doesn't exist. You know, no one's perfect at anything, and all these methods work. They do. They all work, but they
Yeah.
all work for different people. So street activism will work with, that would work on me 100%. I'd have gone vegan the next day. I just never stumbled across any street activism. But other people might cross the road because they don't want to know. I have a friend, for
Mm.
example, who physically sat down with me once and said, yeah, no, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Because if I know, then I can't keep eating it. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's the point. But
Mm.
she's physically begged me not to tell
What's
her.
the
I have
point?
to respect that. I can't then get her to sit down and say, no, you're going to watch this. You can do that. And some people do that, you know, and yes, it works. But you're kind of traumatizing that individual. But then on that side, I
Mm.
can hear them saying in my head, yes, but it's not as traumatizing as what the animals are going through. And we're doing this for the animals. And they're right. They're 100% right. And I agree with that. I really, really do. I just can't do that. I'm what's known as an empath. I just don't have that in me. That's just not me. But I'm really glad there's other people out there who are like that and who are doing that, because that approach does work. It
Mm.
was seeing the graphic footage that made me go vegan. Before then, I'd have stayed pescatarian probably, even after, you know, that fish tank moment. I'd have probably, I don't know, tried to find how fishes were killed, seen something. I thought, oh, that's humane. And, you know, but no, then I saw how fishes are killed and it's absolutely revolting. It's horrific. It's, you wouldn't wish it on your worst. I mean, I don't have any enemies I know of, but you wouldn't, you know, it's just, so I get the forceful approach. And I think it's a really good form of activism. I just couldn't do it myself. I get the softer approaches, you know, that will reach the people, you know, that will cross the street, that will reach them as well. The important thing to take from all of this is that there is so many people out there just trying to do their own thing for animals, and that's what matters. It doesn't matter if we don't all do it the same. It doesn't matter as long as we all do something. And I
Mm.
do genuinely believe we'll get there in the end as well. The issue that I'm struggling with at the moment is where I do some non-fiction writing now. I'm doing a course with sentient media. I want to do like more kind of journalism. I want to get some pieces, you know, like in the Guardian and stuff, you know, focusing on the environmental aspects of animal agriculture, which we all
Yeah.
know again is well, it's killing the planet, isn't it? You know, um,
Mm.
we have to do it quicker. We've realistically got under 10 years, and if it's not done in that time, our world is never going to be the same. You know, I don't believe in pushing out scare tactics because, again, yes, that will work with some people, but then it also has the effect of panic syndrome. And we all saw with COVID what happens when some people panic, you know, who couldn't get toilet roll for how long, which again isn't the end of the world, it's toilet roll. But, you know, imagine that staple things that we actually need, you know, food and things. We don't want to create the panic, which is why I believe the media isn't honest about what happens, certainly why the government isn't. But people do need to know, and we do need to act, and we need to act a hell of a lot quicker than what we are. Or in 20 years' time, you know, this world's going to be a really scary place to live in. Someone that I interviewed quite recently on a feature on the biodiversity crisis against on VLAND UK. In under 10 years, if we
Mm.
don't sort the biodiversity crisis, our earth is turning to dust, it's turning to dirt. And the difference is you can grow crops in earth. You can't grow crops in dirt. You can't, you know, so it's going to affect non-vegans as much as vegans because, well, we can have nothing to eat. You know, it's absolutely
Mm.
terrifying. And the biggest causer of all of this, it's not fossil fuels, it's animal agriculture, you know, like there's so many routes and pathways of all of this. And, you know, we realistically we do need a vegan society. So again, I get why people shove it down people's throats because we do need it. That's the reality, you know. That's not us being hippie, crazy, you know, fanatical people. If we don't do this, our world is never going to be the same, you know. But you can't force people. So we need both approaches. But my God, do we need this to
Mm.
happen quicker? It's scary. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. It really, really is.
100%. Do you think, with that in mind, we spend probably a bit too much time worrying about what other people within the vegan community are
Yes.
doing, whether they're
Yeah,
doing it
just
right
focus on what you're doing. Who
or not?
cares what Bob or Clarice or their random names, but who cares? As long as you are doing something, and if you've gone vegan and you're not doing anything else at the moment, if you can, please try to. It needs all of us. And whether your strength is art, writing, sport, speaking, you know, obviously you've got this podcast here, which is fantastic. It's making a really big difference. If you've got the guts and you can do it and you can do street activism, someone that I work with at the magazine is a street activist. And you know, every Saturday he's out there with the screens doing that, and that's amazing. I'm going to do it one day with him. Every time I see him, I keep saying I want to do it with you. It's one of the ones where they wear the masks, so I find that a bit less daunting because I'm not a fan of confrontation. I know in my head what I want to say, and then something completely different comes out. I'll never forget. I was at school once. Someone
Mm.
was mean to me, and I called them a bush. I mean, just what? And then for 6 months afterwards, I was called bush. You know, no one wants that to happen. I'm not. I
Oh.
know. I know. I'm just not a confrontational person. It doesn't work
Oh.
for me. You know. Um, but whatever your strength is, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, try and use it for veganism somehow because, you know, we need to save these animals and we need to help Mother Nature or the planet that we live on. It's not going to be livable for much longer. That is the very stark reality. It needs all of us.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Turning to the research on your book, and it's kind of a connected point. But you kind of alluded to it earlier. You had to do a lot of research. You wanted to do a lot of research to put yourself in that space where you really understood what animals, non-human animals, go through in the process of kind of animal agriculture and so on. Sometimes as a sort of, as a vegan for some time, and not a huge amount of time, five and a bit years in the grand scheme of things, not a huge amount of time, but some time. I would say, if I'm brutally honest, I probably don't spend too much time in that kind of space of finding out more about the kind of about the plight of animals, because I find it very difficult and quite traumatic to do. So I have to kind of dip in and now and then. And I almost feel like a bit of, and I know a lot of people I've spoken to feel like this. It's like, well, I kind of get that bit. I now need to move into a space of like, what am I going to do about it, as opposed to sort of dwelling in that space, because it's, and maybe that's an excuse for not wanting to go through that sort of pain, and perhaps we all need to do that every so often. And I completely admire those people who go to saves and so on a regular basis. But thinking about that from your perspective, how tough was that once you've already made that logical conclusion in your mind? You feel like you're doing the right thing. You've even decided, I need to spread the word further, and I'm going to do that using my writing. But you knew that the way that you wanted to do it, the methodology you'd chosen in terms of writing fiction, was going to require you to get right in the weeds of it, really, and understand it to a level that maybe most vegans even probably wouldn't.
It was excruciating. It's the hardest part. You still hear it even after you've seen it. I'll start crying on this. You can still hear it. You will never forget the sounds. And then you hate yourself because, again, until I was 30, I contributed towards that. And I think that's why I'm so adamant now that I have to do more. I'm almost atoning for my sins. I hate that I contributed towards that. That's what keeps me awake at night. I ate meat, fish, dairy, eggs, had liver things, all the rest of it for 30 years. I mean, just think how much that contributes to, and again, that's why I think vegans, some people might not like what I'm going to say here, but I think it's really valid and important to say. It's really important to not be preachy. We have to remember our own vegan journey, because even if we've made those changes now and we're not doing those things now, that doesn't make us better than the people that still are. Because however many years ago, unless you were born vegan, at some point, you contributed towards it as well. I did. 30 years. I can never sit there and think that I'm better than someone else that's still eating chicken sandwiches just because the last 4.5 years I haven't. It's because I've only found out about those things then. The best thing that I can do is help that person find out about those things. So hopefully this time next year, they won't be contributing towards it anymore either. It's all about awareness and raising awareness. And seeing these awful things and hearing them, it is very hard to do, but it does just give you the fire to want to do more, because you just want to stop it. My God, do you want to stop it more than anything in the world? If I had the power of Peridot, my main character, I would. I'd just, she's going to have to do it in the book at some point, isn't she? I think this is where it's going. She's going to have to do it. But, you just want to save them, and if you want to know what happens, but you don't want to see and hear the true brutality of it, because, it is so awful, I really do recommend attending a Save Movement vigil, because they're all over most countries, I think, and all different areas. But the truck will stop before it goes into the slaughterhouse facility, and you can just give the animals within the truck, some form of, you get 2 minutes, it's not long, some form of comfort, whether it's a stroke, it's a kind word. You can try and put water bottles through the slats and things, and then after 2 minutes they're moved back in, and that's it. But you don't see them die. You hear it, you hear it, and that's that's enough. But it still just gives you that almost purpose, because when you're there and you see that entire truck full of animals and you look into their eyes, and then that by the end of that day, those eyes aren't going to be open again. ever. You know, it just, I'm gonna cry. It just changes everything, you know, it does. So if you haven't experienced that side of things yet, I really do recommend it. And if you ever did want to help someone become vegan in a non-forceful way, ask them for their support as your friend or family member, and just say, look, you know, I really want to attend one of these things. It's really important. I don't want to go on my own. Please, will you come with me? And I can guarantee if they go with you, they'll be on the same path as us afterwards, because it's just, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Thinking about the release of the
Yes,
books. So the first one's
it is.
already out, second one's on its way. How are folks reacting to that first one?
Really good. That was the scariest thing for me, because obviously my target audience is non-vegans, and it's very obvious by the end of the book that it has a vegan message. So I reeled them in with this tale of magic and adventure, and at the end of it, it's very obvious that I'm trying to get people, you know, to stop buying things that, you know, from the death of animals. Um, I'd say about 70% of people from their reviews have said it's made them look at the world differently, and they want to look into how certain
Wow.
products are made. Some of the reviews that I've received, like on Amazon and Waterstones, etc., say exactly that. And it's just the push that I need to keep going, because yes, I'm not reaching millions of people. I mean, that's what I would love. When I wrote the book, in my head I thought, right, I'm gonna need to sell 1 million copies. If I can make 1 million people vegan before I die, then I'm happy. That was my kind of goal. I know now that selling 1 million books, you know, we can't all be JK Rowling. It doesn't happen that quickly, especially if you're a vegan author. I self-published originally. The story was exactly the same, just with a slightly different cover, and no one knew about it. Only, you know, only my friends and my family bought it, and it, you know, they all raved about it. But I was devastated, because I know I've got a brilliant story there. Peridot is amazing. She's real. She's here with me now. My characters
Yeah.
aren't characters; they're real to me. They're everywhere. And thankfully, a traditional publisher liked the story and picked it up. And funnily enough, she's not vegan. We've got similar spiritual beliefs. So a lot of
Right.
people always comment on my hand tattoo. So I identify as what's known as an eclectic witch. So my spiritual beliefs are a mix of pagan, Wiccan, and kind of new age spiritual beliefs, very much one with nature. Yes, I hug trees. And I've incorporated a lot of that into the book. It's where I've got a lot of my readers. You know, it's people that are interested in magic and, you know, aligning with nature, which then, you know, does fall into the category of veganism, because how can you align with nature and consume dead animals? You know, that's why I was such a hypocrite for 30 years, because, you know, I've lived this certain way and done all these rituals and done all these things, and then every time I sat down to dinner, I was doing the opposite, you know, like it's just, oh, it's crazy when you realize everything. But yeah, I think a lot of other people have kind of read the book and then maybe felt like that as well. Whether they've gone vegan or not, I don't know, but I think it's certainly opened their eyes, and they're going to read book 2. And by the end of book 2, I'm hoping that's going to be the clincher. So book 1, Earthlings the beginning, it's more of an opening to dairy and the kind of how livestock are kept, because a lot of the characters that you meet within the book are livestock, um, human livestock. But then moving on to book 2, it gets considerably darker. So that's when we move into slaughterhouse territory. And that's why I had to do so much research, because I couldn't have the characters in Earthlings and Dominion experiencing all these things if they don't happen in real life. I had to get it right down to a T, from the name of the doors that they walk through to, you know, what they go down on their way to slaughter is known as the race. You know, just terminology and stuff. I had to get that all correct for it to be, you know, viable for what I'm trying to do. So hopefully by the end of book 2, people that are like kind of, you know, into Peridot's story will really get that message. By the end of book 3, all of them are going to be vegan. It's my intention, but we'll see. We'll see.
And the book's already got some pretty high quality praise in terms of critical review and
Yeah.
award winning in fact. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of felt, because I
I
imagine that
was
was pretty
yeah, well, I've gone
validating.
from self-publishing and only my mum and Doris reading it. So all of a sudden, loads of people are reading it, saying all these nice things, and got some awards. So I was chuffed to bits. But so The first award was Book of the Year, which was just mind blowing. But with like it was an indie bookshop award, so it's not like Waterstones or anything. But
Yeah.
still, for me, it was huge. It was absolutely huge, especially as the person that awarded it isn't vegan. You know, like I say, the majority of my readers aren't vegan. They are now, since the vegan community's kind of got behind the story and are reading it too, which is great. And if you've got someone in your life that isn't vegan and has no interest in watching Cowspiracy or Earthlings or, you know, all the documents, please try and give them my book because it might do the trick. And then
Yeah.
after that, it was an environmental award. So it's really important to me to kind of practice what I preach, even though I try really hard not to preach. So my books, where possible, are printed on recycled paper. Everyone knows animal agriculture is a huge driver of deforestation, climate change, and all the rest of it. But so is the publishing industry. I always just kind of thought when
Mm.
I published a book that I could print on recycled paper. It's not that simple. It's really hard to do. I don't know why the publishing industry isn't doing it. It's
Right.
really frustrating. So I'm now a member of something called the Climate Fiction Writers League and the Society of Authors Working
Mm.
Sustainability Group. And we're trying really, really hard to get publishers to commit to kind of 10 key policies that will make publishing more sustainable and more eco-friendly. Everyone kind of uses something known as Forest Stewardship Council paper, and it's just greenwashing. It's just
Right.
greenwashing. Doesn't mean diddly
Right.
squat. You might as well just chop down a tree. Doesn't make any difference. It's just more stuff that I'm
Wow.
learning on this journey. That again, veganism opens so many other paths. It's crazy. So yeah, I won an environmental
Mm.
award for that with Essex Business Awards, which was nice. I also plant a tree for every book that I sell as well. So if anyone buys a book, I plant a tree. The Peridot forest is growing very well. I'm hoping to have an actual forest soon, which would be nice. And most recently, because I didn't market it as a vegan book, and I was so, what's the word? Adamant that I couldn't, because if I did that, it would put people off reading, and I didn't want to do that. Well, since then, some vegans have read, and you know, I've got behind, and loads of people. Vegan Business Tribe, for example, have been absolutely amazing. They've just been sort of championing the book everywhere they can. They've been brilliant. I think that's where a lot of the vegan readers have come from. So I'm
Yeah.
so grateful to them. They're an absolutely fantastic community. And we won a Vegan Choice Award as well. So that was just icing on the cake. I'm chuffed to bits, absolutely chuffed to bits. And I
Incredible.
just hope it keeps building momentum and people like book two, and that my kind of intent behind the books does come to be reality. You know, I'd hate to have done all of this and then all the readers do keep, you know, eating Allens. We'll see.
Well, I'm sure we will one day be watching the film
Oh,
version of
fingers
the
crossed.
trilogy,
That's my end goal. That's what I want to happen, but
and it'll
we'll see.
yeah, and it'll be huge, bigger than the
Yes.
Hunger Games. I can see it now. It's amazing. So, new book out in
November. So
October. I
November
want to say, is that
November the
right?
10th,
September,
and the
November.
launch is at VegFest. So I'll be in the vegan business tribe village hub in VegFest, and I think there's like an author panel and
Awesome.
all sorts going on. So if you're not doing anything that weekend, please do come on down. I'd love to meet you all, and I would love for you to read The Earthlings World. I hope you enjoy.
I'll be there
Hey,
too, actually. So I'll
lovely.
100% be checking that out. Amazing. And where can folks pick up a copy of the book? Where's the best place to
Absolutely
go?
anywhere. So it's available everywhere. Because of the name, obviously, I named it Earthlings after Earthlings. If you just search Earthlings, then obviously the Earthlings documentary will come up. So it's Earthlings, The Beginning by Ray Starr, available everywhere, but everywhere it's on recycled paper except for Amazon. So Amazon don't offer sustainable printing. Started a campaign last year called the Read Green campaign to try and do something about that, but we didn't get many signatures. Unfortunately, it's kind of fallen
Hmm.
flat, which is a shame. But yeah, you can buy it anywhere, but on Amazon, it won't be on recycled paper.
Well, we'll definitely pick up a copy. Try and go to your local book retailer if you can. And if they haven't got it,
Please.
ask for it. I think that's always a good tactic as well. Helps get more retailers interested as well. If they haven't got it, make sure they're getting it in. Right, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Best of luck with the trilogy. I'm sure it's going to be
Thank
amazing, and
you.
you're going to reach that million.
Hope
No
so.
doubt the quality
Fingers
is
and
there. It's
toes crossed.
fantastic.
Thank you for
Thank you
having me.
so
It's been
much.
great chatting with you.
Thanks
See
so
ya.
much, Ray.
Bye.